My parents called me. Ungrateful for refusing to fund my brother's startup. So I built my own company and hired him as my assistant. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, my brother Jason has been the golden child. He was born 2 years before me, and from the moment we were kids, it was like the world bent to make his life easier. He got praise for turning in half-done school projects, while I got scolded for not trying hard enough even when I brought home straight A's. When he crashed my dad's car at 17, they called it a learning experience. When I accidentally chipped a mug helping my mom clean, she sighed like I'd betrayed the entire family. Jason was charming, sure, but lazy. He flunked out of college, jumped from job to job, and somehow my parents still saw him as ambitious. I, on the other hand, worked 2 part-time jobs through school and graduated without a cent of debt. No one threw a party. No one even said they were proud. Over time, I stopped trying to win their attention. I carved my own path, quietly. I got into tech, saved aggressively, and started drafting my own business plan. All while Jason lived rent-free in our parents' guest house, spending his days gaming and posting half-baked startup ideas on Twitter. Then, 3 months ago, he called a family dinner. That's what he labeled it. I knew something was off the moment I walked into the dining room. My parents were smiling a little too wide, and Jason had this smug, rehearsed look on his face. He laid out a plan, if you could even call it that, for a next-gen e-commerce platform that would revolutionize dropshipping. No prototype, no market research, just buzzwords and vibes. Then he dropped the real bomb. He wanted me to invest $30,000. He actually said, "You've got savings, right? Help your brother out." I laughed. I thought it was a joke. But when I looked at my parents' faces, I realized they weren't joking. They were waiting for me to say yes. The silence after Jason's pitch felt like a loaded gun on the table. My parents looked at me like this was my cue to cheer, clap, throw my wallet across the table. Instead, I said carefully, "That's a lot of money, Jason. What exactly would it be used for?" He rolled his eyes like I'd just insulted his intelligence. "You're the business guy, right? It's seed capital, marketing, developers, some branding, domain stuff. The usual. There was no spreadsheet. No breakdown. No pitch deck. Just vibes and entitlement." I looked at my mom and dad, expecting at least one of them to acknowledge how absurd this was. But my mom jumped in first, voice soft, eyes wide with fake encouragement. "Honey, this is your brother's dream. He just needs someone to believe in him. You always talk about helping people grow, right? This is your chance." My jaw clenched. I couldn't believe it. I'd been busting my ass for years, never once asked them for a dime. Meanwhile, Jason was tossing out half-baked fantasies and getting a standing ovation. "Jason," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I've been saving for my own startup. I don't have $30K to burn on something without a plan." He smirked like he'd expected that. "So you're saying no?" I'm saying. "I need more than buzzwords and a family dinner guilt trip." That was the match. My dad slammed his fork down. "You've always been jealous of your brother. Always acting like you're better because you've got a job and a few savings. But where's your heart? Where's your family loyalty?" I was stunned. That's what they thought? That I was selfish for not handing over my future? Jason leaned back, arms folded. "Wow. Guess I finally know who you really are." My mom just whispered, "Ungrateful." That word echoed in my head like a punch. Ungrateful for not funding recklessness, I left before dessert. And I knew, walking out that door, this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to a group text from my mom. "We just want to talk when you calm down." Calm down? I'd barely said a word compared to the storm that came from their side. Still, I replied politely, told them I needed space. That space, apparently, was unacceptable. Over the next week, the guilt campaign went into full force. My mom called daily, leaving voicemails filled with trembling sighs. "Family should help family," she said in one. "I don't know what happened to the sweet boy who used to share everything with his brother." My dad's messages were colder. "If you can't stand by Jason now, don't expect us to stand by you later." I started hearing from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunts, uncles, even a cousin I barely knew, all just checking in. But their words were identical. Jason told us he just needs a little help to get started. You're doing well. Can't you support him? It was coordinated, scripted, and every message chipped away at me. At work, I'd catch myself staring at my phone, heart pounding every time it buzzed. My coworkers probably thought I was dealing with a breakup. In a way, I was, just not the romantic kind. This was the slow death of my relationship with my family. One night, my best friend Aaron came over. He looked at the unread messages piling up on my phone and said, "Man, they're not trying to talk. They're trying to wear you down." He was right. It wasn't about understanding. It was about control. That night, I muted the family chat for the first time in my life. But just before I fell asleep, I saw Jason's newest post online. When your own blood turns their back on you. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments calling him brave. And in that moment I realized he wasn't just trying to guilt me privately. He was painting me as the villain publicly. A week after I muted the family chat, I got a knock on my apartment door around 9 p.m. It was Jason. He looked different, cleaner, sharper, like he had dressed for a magazine cover shoot, not a real conversation. His voice was calm, but it carried that same passive-aggressive smugness he always used when he knew our parents were watching. "Can we talk?" he said, already walking in without waiting for an answer. I didn't offer him a seat. He took one anyway, settling into my couch like he owned the place. "I'm going to be straight with you," he started. "This thing I'm building? It's going to work, with or without you. But Mom and Dad? They're pissed. You're making things really hard for everyone." I folded my arms. "I'm not stopping you from building anything, Jason. I'm just not bankrolling it." He shrugged. "You think this is about money? It's about family, about loyalty. You've always had this chip on your shoulder, like you were better than all of us because you work a 9-to-5 and live alone." I didn't respond, because anything I said would just bounce off that entitled ego. That's when he dropped it. The ultimatum. If you don't help me, if you don't invest, then don't expect to be part of this family anymore. Mom and Dad are done. They already told me. I stared at him. It wasn't anger I felt. It was a kind of sadness I couldn't name, like watching something rot in slow motion. "You're really okay with cutting me off over money?" I asked. He smirked. "You're the one choosing to be difficult." That night I walked him to the door. No words, no handshake. The next day I checked my phone. Removed from the family group chat. Blocked by 2 cousins. Not a single call from my parents. I wasn't even angry. Just empty. But underneath that numbness, something else was starting to build. Not revenge. Not yet, just clarity. And maybe for the first time, freedom. After that night, the silence from my family was deafening, but strangely peaceful. No passive-aggressive texts. No guilt-tripping voicemails. No check-ins from people who hadn't cared about my life until I became the villain in Jason's story. I poured everything into my routine. I woke up earlier, worked longer hours, ate better, focused. I'd been sitting on a product. Idea for over a year. An automated fulfillment plugin for small e-commerce stores, and now I finally had the mental space to build it. The apartment became my lab. My living room turned into a workspace cluttered with sticky notes, whiteboard sketches, half-drunk coffee mugs, and 2 old monitors blinking code and analytics side by side. There were nights I forgot to eat, nights I fell asleep mid-sentence typing an email. But it was mine. Every line of code, every late-night breakthrough, every small win. Mine. One morning, I got a ping from a Shopify forum where I'd dropped a beta link. Someone tried it, loved it, and shared it on Twitter. Within 2 days, I had a dozen DMs from small store owners asking if I was taking on clients. I wasn't even done building yet. The attention was small, but it felt like validation I'd never received at home. Not for doing something flashy, but for creating something real. Still, every notification came with a flicker of hesitation. I'd scan names, half expecting to see my mom or dad. Some part of me was still holding out hope that they'd call. Not to apologize, but to just ask how I was doing. They didn't. But you know who did? Aaron. He dropped off groceries once a week without asking. My old college mentor called to offer feedback on the prototype. Strangers sent thank you notes after testing my plugin. That's when it hit me. Family isn't just blood. Sometimes family is the people who show up without being asked, and the ones who stay, even after everyone else walks away. About 6 weeks into quietly building my startup, I got a call from an old college friend, Liam. We hadn't spoken in months, but his first words were, "Dude, have you seen what's going on with Jason?" My stomach tightened. Apparently, Jason had found a different investor, some wealthy distant uncle on my mom's side. He'd officially launched his startup, even did a flashy reveal video on Instagram with lights, music, a rented Tesla, the works. It got decent traction at first. Lots of likes, lots of hype, but no real product. Liam sent me a link to a Reddit thread, scammed by a fake entrepreneur promising a drop-shipping empire. There were screenshots, angry comments, even leaked DMs. Jason had taken pre-orders, promised exclusive access to a supplier network that didn't exist, and ghosted half his clients when things started falling apart. My hands trembled as I read through the thread. It wasn't just messy, it was a disaster. A few days later, Aaron forwarded me a post from our local business group. Family selling their home to cover son's failed venture. It didn't name anyone, but the details were unmistakable. Jason had burned through all the cash. My parents were now dipping into their retirement fund. They hadn't told me a word. I waited, half expecting them to reach out. Not for help, maybe just out of shame. But they didn't. Instead, they doubled down on pretending I didn't exist. I wish I could say I felt smug satisfaction. I didn't. Just this heavy, hollow ache in my chest. They'd gambled everything on him, and lost. Meanwhile, I'd just closed my first 5 paying clients. No investors. No family money. Just hard work. I sat at my desk that night, staring at the screen, processing the irony. They called me ungrateful for protecting my savings. Now, they were the ones with nothing left to give. And Jason, he wasn't done dragging others down with him. Not even close. It was a rainy Thursday when my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said, "Pick up." "Hey, it's Jason." I froze. I hadn't heard his voice in over 2 months. Not since the ultimatum, not since the fallout. He sounded deflated, no cocky tone. No passive aggression. Just hollow. "Look, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from," he said, sighing, "but I need a job. I know you've got something going. I've seen it online." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. My inbox was full. My client list had doubled in the past week. The business was picking up steam. He continued, "I'm not looking for a handout. I'll start wherever. I screwed up, okay?" It was the closest thing to accountability I'd ever heard from him. Still, I wasn't ready to let him off the hook. "And Mom and Dad?" I asked. "They know you're calling me?" A pause. Then, "They told me not to. They said it'd be beneath me to ask. But I'm not in a position to be proud right now." There it was. The twist I never expected. Jason, my parents' pride and joy, asking me for help. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I told him I'd think about it. After we hung up, I sat in silence. Rain pattered against the windows, the hum of my computer barely audible. A part of me wanted to slam the door shut, let him sink like they let me drown. But another part, deeper, quieter, whispered, "This might be your moment to rewrite everything." Not for him. For me. And I wasn't going to let it pass without making him earn every inch. 2 days later, I called Jason back. "I have a role," I told him. "Entry level. Admin support. Remote for now. Hourly contract. You'll report directly to the operations manager, not me." There was a pause. I could practically hear him swallowing his pride on the other end. "Okay," he finally said. "I'll take it, no arguments. No snark, just quiet acceptance." And somehow, That unsettled me more than if he'd fought back. I onboarded him like I would any stranger. No shortcuts, no special treatment. I had my team send him the same documentation packet we used for all new hires. NDA, training materials, expectations. He signed it without complaint. His first task? Organize client intake data from the last quarter and format it into a spreadsheet. Not exactly the co-founder role he probably envisioned when he first pitched his startup fantasy. I'll admit, the team was confused. "You sure this guy's the right fit?" Aaron asked privately. "We're scaling fast. No time for dead weight. He'll either step up or step out," I replied. "But I'm not giving him anything he hasn't earned." Surprisingly, Jason delivered. Quietly, efficiently. No bragging. No corner-cutting. It was like working with a muted version of him. Less charm, more humility, and while part of me waited for the mask to slip, it didn't. At least, not yet. Then came the text from my mom. "So you hired your own brother to be your assistant? Really? That's your idea of forgiveness? No congratulations. No, we're proud of you. Just outraged that their golden boy was no longer sitting on a throne." I didn't reply. Jason never brought it up. He just kept his head down and worked. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing their approval. I was writing my own narrative. One promotion, one spreadsheet, one boundary at a time. But I knew the peace wouldn't last, 'cause people like my parents don't go quietly. It happened on a Tuesday. I had just wrapped a pitch meeting with a major retail client, one that could triple our exposure, when my receptionist buzzed in, voice tense. Your parents are here, and they're insisting on speaking with you." I thought I'd misheard. But when I stepped into the lobby, there they were. My dad, arms crossed, face stone cold. My mom, eyes already watering with performative disappointment. And Jason, standing awkwardly beside them, his face pale like he'd been dragged there against his will. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "We're here because you clearly have no shame," my dad snapped. "Hiring your own brother to be your assistant? Are you trying to humiliate him?" My mom chimed in, her voice trembling. "You've always resented him. Now that you've got a little money, you think it's okay to treat him like a servant?" I took a deep breath, motioned them into a private conference room, and shut the door behind us. "I gave Jason a job," I said evenly. "One he accepted. One he's doing well, by the way." "It's degrading," my mom hissed. "You should have made him a partner. Shared your success with him. He's your brother." I looked at Jason. "Is that what you want?" He shook his head slowly. "No, I told them not to come. I said I was fine, but my dad wouldn't stop. You've always had a chip on your shoulder. Now you're just proving how petty you are. You're nothing without this family." Something in me cracked. I stood up. "No, I'm everything because I finally stepped away from this family. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the hierarchy. I built this without a dime from you." My mom's lip quivered. "You've changed." "Yeah," I said. "For the better." I opened the door. "You can leave now." They hesitated, then walked out stone-faced. Jason lingered a second longer. "I'm sorry," he whispered before following them. The room went silent again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt like mine. In the weeks after that showdown, something shifted, not just in my company, but in me. I stopped waiting for approval. I stopped checking my phone for messages that would never come. I started living in the now, fully immersed in the business I had built from scratch. No guilt, no apology. Our revenue doubled that month. A YouTube tech reviewer mentioned our plugin in passing, and the ripple effect was immediate. Inquiries, demos, pre-orders. I barely had time to breathe. I hired 2 new developers, signed 3 more mid-sized clients. My inbox felt like a floodgate of possibility, and through it all, Jason stayed quiet. He showed up on time, turned in clean, thoughtful work, took feedback without defensiveness. He even started offering minor suggestions that made processes smoother, never overstepping, just helping. One afternoon, I walked past his desk and overheard him on a support call. Calm, patient, clear. A far cry from the arrogant guy I once knew. I don't know if it was shame or growth, but something in him had shifted too. Aaron pulled me aside one day and said, "Man, I think he's actually trying." I nodded. "Yeah, I think so too." But my walls were still up, not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed to protect the peace I had finally carved out. My parents? Radio silence. Their number was still blocked. Holidays passed, no calls, no invitations. And surprisingly, I didn't miss them. Instead, I hosted a small team dinner. Just a few friends, a bottle of wine, and laughter that didn't come with strings attached. I raised a glass and said, "To building what they said I didn't deserve." And in that moment, looking around the table, I realized I hadn't just hired my brother, I'd rebuilt myself. But there was still one thing left unfinished. One final visit. Not for closure. Not for confrontation, just to prove, to them, and to myself, that I didn't need anything they refused to give. It was late spring when I finally did it. I packed 2 cardboard boxes, old yearbooks, a few family trinkets, and a box of childhood photos my mom had insisted on keeping safe in her attic. I didn't need them anymore, not really, but something about returning them felt like closing a chapter I'd been dragging behind me for years. Their house looked the same, but smaller. Faded siding, garden overgrown, porch light flickering like it wasn't sure it wanted to stay on. I knocked out of courtesy, though I still had the key. My dad opened the door. He didn't say a word. I held up the boxes. "Just dropping these off." He stepped aside, stone-faced like I was some delivery guy. My mom appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing the same old cardigan she always wore when she wanted to look fragile. "Are you here to make peace?" she asked, voice trembling like she rehearsed it in the mirror. "No," I said quietly. "I'm here to let go." I set the boxes down by the stairs. No dramatic speech, no yelling, no begging for understanding that would never come, just weight lifted, piece by piece. My mom stepped closer. "You really think all this success makes you better than your family?" I looked at her. Really looked. For the first time, I didn't see a mother. I saw a woman terrified of losing control. "No," I said. "It doesn't make me better. It just made me free." She blinked. My dad clenched his jaw. Neither moved to stop me as I walked out. Outside, the air felt different. Lighter. Like the final string had been cut. I sat in my car for a while, watching the front door. No one followed me. No one yelled my name, and for once, the silence didn't sting. It felt earned. As I started the engine, I didn't look back. Because the life I wanted, it wasn't in that house anymore. It was waiting for me, just down the road. A year later, I signed the lease for our new headquarters. 3 floors. Open workspace. A coffee bar in the corner. Floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the room with light. No more working in the dark. As I stood there with the keys in my hand, I thought about the kid I used to be. The one who craved praise that never came. The one who thought success meant finally being chosen by his family. But now, I was choosing myself. Jason still worked with us. Not as my assistant anymore. He'd slowly earned his way into operations. Quietly reliable, surprisingly thoughtful. He never asked for a promotion. Never once tried to skip the line. When he got his first bonus check, he walked into my office, held it up, and said, "I don't deserve this, but thank you for letting me earn it." I just nodded. "You're not the same guy you used to be." He smiled, tired but real. "Neither are you." We didn't need to say more. The growth wasn't just in the business. It was in the boundaries I'd learned to draw, in the friends who'd become family, in the clients who referred me not because of flash, but because of trust. I never heard from my parents again. No calls, no letters, not even a message when we landed our biggest deal last quarter. And you know what? That silence, once so painful, became the proof of my peace. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need them to grovel. The victory was quiet, but total. As I stood by the window of my new office, watching my team laugh over coffee, I felt it settle deep in my bones. They called me ungrateful for not funding his dream, So I built my own and gave him something better than a handout, a second chance. Not because he deserved it, but because I did. I deserved to stop living in their shadow and finally stand in my own light.